Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Jesse Bruner. I'm an international educator with Gelish and for Nail Alliance, and I'm a colleague of Kamisha Jackson, your teacher. And so I was really excited when she invited me to be a guest speaker with you all today. So I've prepared a little lesson for you to work on your acrylic mix ratio. Try to zoom out a little bit. So I'm going to give you a few little tips just for working with liquid and powder acrylic system, and just some things that you can do when you're practicing to take advantage of this time that you have at home, all the free time you have to help develop your skills. So we're going to do a few little exercises and practice our work, so give you some ideas and tips for you to do at home. So the things that you will need your acrylic monomer and acrylic powders. I'm going to have, want to make sure that you have both pigmented powders and powders without any pigments, because the technique for working with each of them is different. So I have Vivid White, I have Studio Cover Cool, so those are my pigmented powders. And we have Elegant Pink and Crystal Clear. Those are some examples of powders that don't have a lot of pigments. And then I also have Express White, which is our most pigmented powder. So when you're working with the powders which have pigments in them, you're generally going to work with a drier consistency because they have pigments and acrylic powder. Whereas with your sheer powders, you're going to work with a little bit of just a normal traditional ratio. So you won't adjust the ratio as much because they don't have pigments in them. So these are more pure polymer powders. So you just have to keep that in mind. The more pigments you have, the less liquid that you have in order to get the right consistency. I'm also going to be showing you a really easy way to practice. Hey, Kim, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. So one of my favorite ways to practice is just take a C-curve stick and nail forms. So I'm going to show you how we can work with these to practice. It's really nice because you have the guideline already to do your French, so you can follow the guide. So we have those. I also have this Arabella form just to show you the first practices of the consistency, but you just need something which repels the acrylic. You can even take the paper from your nail forms. So this area will also repel the product, or you can have like a Tupperware or plastic. So just something to practice placing your beads in the initial phase when you're first starting. And then I'm going to show you another way to practice when you get bored of doing French nails. You can also practice with your 3D brush, and we can do some little flower petals. So I'm going to show you that too with the white acrylic, because that's another fun way to practice. So we also need paper towels. You'll need a dappen dish. And another big tip for practicing at home is I recommend that you have a little bit of aluminum foil, because after you're finished with your practice, you can take your brush wipe, put it in this foil, and it will help contain the odor so that you won't have the smell lingering in your salon or at home, especially when you're at home. So definitely have a small piece of foil so that you can wrap up your brush wipe whenever you're finished practicing. Your family will thank me for giving you that tip. So I'm going to do a little bit of a zoom. So when we talk about the mix ratio, what do we mean? Mix ratio is the proportion of acrylic monomer to acrylic polymer that you need to have the right bead to work with. So basically, we have the monomer, which is the liquid, the polymer, which is the powder, and together they make an acrylic bead. And that acrylic bead has to have the right consistency, or we can't work with it. There's no workability. So the biggest question that people have is, can I just use any liquid with any powder? So you already know the answer because I'm a brand representative. So my answer is going to be that you have to use the system as a system. So why do we say that? So sometimes when companies make products, they want to just make a comprehensive line, okay? And they want to have companion pieces, and they want everything to fit together. And so they create everything that you need. Like, for example, hand sanitizer. We have surface cleansing spray from Morgan Taylor. Do you have to use ours to clean the hands? No, you don't. So that's a case of marketing. So sometimes the branding is just a marketing. You want to have something all together. You want to have a comprehensive line that has everything you need. But of course we know, because we're smart, we know that we can interchange those products. But When we're talking about polymer and monomer, this is a whole different story because we are using these two things to make one thing, an acrylic bead. So the fact that we have one liquid and one powder, this is not a case of marketing, this is chemistry. So it is important when we're mixing two things together to create a coating, you do want those two things to be designed to work together. So when you have dehydrator, top coat, maybe cuticle oil, you can use any brand when it comes to that because those are really simple functions. But when we have the chemistry of a liquid monomer and a polymer powder, or we have a UV gel and a UV lamp, that's a different situation. And that's the time when the chemistry is very precise and we do want to work with the things together. So if you have whatever liquid and whatever powder, I don't know if it's going to work. So all I can say is that if you have the brand suited to each other, you won't get heat spike, you won't get lifting, you won't have any of those problems. So I recommend that you use one monomer with one powder. So the first exercise, the first thing I want you to do is just practice picking up beads and putting them down. I've already kind of scanned your group, and I saw Kamisha showing this demo already on the little practice cards. So those are great. So that's what I'm going to show you, what we're looking for when we work with those practice cards. So before I start, I have my dish there. So I have a little bit of monomer. So as I said before, you need to have a technique for working with your pigmented powders and a technique for working with your sheer powders. So we use the sheer powders more, so I think that's a good place to start. But you have to understand that the consistency is going to be different with each of those powders. I'm going to try to get everything in the screen. Little FYI, I usually would never put my powder on the towel I'm wiping on because that is really dangerous, but I'm going to be careful and we'll do it anyway. But usually you would not have the powder on the same paper towel because you don't want the powder to get stuck to the towel and then you knock it over. So just keep that in mind, but I want you to see everything in the camera. So we have our acrylic brush. I forgot to show you the brushes. So Harmony brush is about a size 9. And then I also have acrylic 3D brush. I'm going to show you a few little things later with that. So we need Kolinsky sable brush. I prefer to have one with a point because I can use the belly and I can use the point. So this is the type of brush that I'm using. I know there's a lot of different acrylic brushes out there. So what we're looking for when we pick up the beads, so we dip our brush into the liquid, so you can see, and I wipe all the way on one side, halfway on the other side, and then half again. So I'm just kind of loading the liquid into the brush. And then we dip into the powder. So you can see, I usually just do 3 taps. 1, 2, 3. And you see we have a bead which kind of looks like, trying to get it to zoom. No, not turn around. So we have a bead which kind of looks like frosted glass. And when we place it on the form, it releases from the brush. Nothing's left on the brush. And you can see the bead levels out a little bit, but it's not running everywhere. Now, I left that bead on my brush kind of a long time, so that's why it took a little bit. Is that the bead levels just a little bit, but it's not running anywhere to the sides. So when we have the bead that's the right consistency, we can press it and work it into place, and it doesn't stick to the brush, and we can take full advantage of the sculpting time of the acrylic, which is between 1 and 2 minutes. So when we have our bead the right consistency, we can work with the product for as much time as we need to, and it makes our work a lot easier. So that was kind of a bigger bead. I'll show you for a smaller bead. So I do the same wiping method, I just take more liquid out. But I still do 3 little presses, and there we have a smaller bead. And when we put it onto the nail, it releases from the brush, and it's leveling a little bit, but it's not running everywhere. So this bead is a good consistency. I can press it into place. It's not sticking to my brush. So that's what we want. That's what we're looking for. And you also can see that we don't have bubbles in the surface. That's the other sign of the right consistency. Now let me show you just an example of when we have the bead that's too wet, because this is the biggest mistake. because people just have too much liquid in their brush and not enough powder. So we'll dip all of our liquid in. I'll just wipe off a little bit, and then just into the powder, not as much. And you can see I have a bead which is not just leveling, but it's running a lot more. And you can see from the side it flattens out right away. It doesn't keep that kind of like full-bodied shape as the bead, which is correct. So you see you end up chasing it around and it's sticking to your brush. That's just not going to work as well. Now you can fight with this bead and you can make a nail out of it, okay? So if you're a little bit off on the consistency, you can still work with it, but you're going to work much harder. It's going to be more difficult, and you can experience some service breakdown by having too wet of a mix ratio. So I will show you a less common mistake, but it can still happen, and that's too dry. So too dry means we have not enough liquid and too much powder. So we'll go into our liquid, and then this time I'm going to pick up way too much powder. Can you see all the powder is like not even collecting with the monomer? And then when I touch to the nail, it doesn't really want to come off my brush. It leaves a lot in the brush. And even after moments, it's still not going to level. So you try to press it. You can imagine trying to blend this around the cuticle now, and it's going to be more difficult. And you may not see in the camera, but there's lots of grains of powder because the monomer wasn't able to mix with the powder in the right time before we start pressing it. So while the polymerization's trying to happen, you're pressing it and you're pushing air into it. So you're going to have bubbles, you're going to have powder, then it's just a big mess. So we don't want to work too dry either. Now, some of the service breakdown that you can get from too wet or too dry of a bead. So if you have too wet of a bead, I think the biggest reaction, the biggest consequence is that you'll get a heat spike when the acrylic is curing. So if you have somebody with sensitive nails, they actually can feel the heat build up. You also will get, after 2-3 days after the nails are applied, you get kind of a tightening feeling when the acrylic was worked too wet, because when it's too wet, then the polymerization keeps happening for a couple days after the set was applied, and as it cures, it starts to retract and tighten. So that gives you like an uncomfortable kind of a pinching feel to your nail. Maybe you've experienced this before if you've ever had your nails done. So too wet can cause, and also can cause lifting because it's not sealed completely around the cuticle area. Now, if we look at the bead which is too dry, the biggest problem that you'll have with too dry of a consistency is the product will be brittle because the acrylic and the polymer and the monomer wasn't able to mix together properly to form a solid chain. So the finished result is kind of brittle because the raw powder is mixed in with the acrylic bead. So not only does it make our job more difficult when we work with acrylic in the wrong consistency, but it also can lead to problems with the nails, what we're doing. So we have, let me just take some of these off. So now we have a pretty good technique, I think, for working with the clear powders. I'll just show you again what we're looking for. So we dip our brush into the liquid, wipe on both sides a little bit, into the powder, and we get something like frosted glass. And when you place your bead on your practice sheet or on whatever you're practicing on, it levels a little bit, but it's not completely flattening out and it's not running everywhere. So that's a good consistency. So that's our clear powders. Now, powders which are pigmented also have a similar ratio and all the same things apply. Just the difference is the bead looks a little bit different when it is the right consistency. So you have to get used to that. You're gonna work with it drier than with the clear powders. So you're actually gonna use less monomer compared to polymer because you have to account for the pigments that are in the powder. So when we have a colored powder, we can pick it up the same way, but you see it looks more like an orange peel. It's a little bit more grainy than the frosted glass. And you'll also notice when I place it on the form, it doesn't dome out quite as soon when it's the right consistency. Do you see how it's kind of staying in place? But I can still work with it. It still doesn't stick to my brush. And I can push it and take advantage of the sculpting time just to push it into place. So I think too wet of a bead with the white powders is way more common mistake. So usually it's because people are going for the frosted glass, which is how it should look with the clear powders. But you see, when we have pigmented powders, they get much, much runnier compared to the consistency of the one that's the right ratio. So when we have white, and it's the same when we have cover pinks, because cover pink is kind of based on white powder too. So I'll just show you one little bead with that too. So with the cover pink, we want also kind of the orange peel consistency. So a little bit grainier. That's what we're looking for. And then when we press it to the nail, the pigments and the monomer and the polymer all come together and we get workability. So the first thing, what I would recommend if you're brand new to acrylic, is just practice placing these beads, practice different sizes. So you want to pick up a bigger bead, a smaller bead, and just practice your ratios. And like I said, you can use this kind of Arabella form, or you can use nail form paper, or you can use any of these laminated practice sheets that you have with bead sizes already on there. So once we have had a chance to practice our mix ratio and we're ready to practice our application skills, I want to show you how this works when we do a nail. So I'm going to show you two applications. I'm going to show you white first, French, so the white and then the pink. And then I'm going to show you the reverse technique where we do cover pink, sheer pink, and then bright white. So I'm going to show you a couple applications. And I just have my C-curve stick with nail form on both sides. It's a great way to practice because it's reusable and you can use the guides, which are on the form, to follow the shape. So it's a really good way to practice. So let me know if you guys can see everything and if you can hear me well. Make sure. Done. Okay. So I have my liquid, trying to make sure you can see everything in the screen. I have my white powder and my pink powder. Move up a little. Okay. So with the white first technique, I'm going to pick up the white bead, I'm going to place it on the nail, and then I'm going to push up to the smile line, one side at a time, on both sides. Okay, excellent, Samantha. Thank you for confirming. So now I'll zoom in a little bit again. So I dip my brush in the liquid, all the way, wipe off all the way on one side, half on the other side, and then half again. Because remember, with the white powder, we want to work with a little bit drier consistency, so we take a little bit more liquid out of the brush. Then I dip into the powder till I get my orange peel consistency, and you can always freeze it into place by tapping off the excess liquid on the brush. Then I'm going to place this white bead on the form a little bit lower than I want the smile line, because when I press, it's going to go right to where I want it. And then I just start working one side to the other. So right now I have the tips of the brush a little bit behind the smile line, because I need to be able to create a crisp wall so that I have a place to put my pink up against. So the first step is just get the smile line into place. Then I can take the belly of the brush and shorten the nail. Make sure it's covering both sides. And now that the bead's firmed up a little bit, now I can use the belly of the brush just to distribute the product all the way across, one side to the other. And then right when it's started to set up and it's not moving anymore, now is the perfect time to clean your brush and clean off the smile line. So if you start cleaning the smile line too soon in the application, before the acrylic ratio is right, before the bead has moved to the right phase, your smile line is just going to keep running back. So it's a really good idea to take your time, spend the first few moments of the sculpting working on the extension, working on the level edge, and then when the acrylic's a little bit firmer, then you can clean the smile line. And you will find yourself not cleaning it quite so often. So it will stay more where you put it. And when we have the right ratio, we have a lot more time to work with the product. So our goal for the white bead is to create a small wall so that the pink does not go over the white too much. So we have a taller area at the smile line and a thinner area at the free edge. So when I do this application, usually my next step is to level this area. So I'm going to take a small bead. So you see we have a wall, okay? And then here's the natural nail on the bottom. The first thing I do with the pink bead is I smooth out this area. So for me, when I do this technique, the second bead is really small because I'm just leveling out the smile line. So small bead, a little bit frosted glass, and I just put this right in the little cave. And I just give it a moment to flow. This will also help you not get bubbles. So just leveling the smile line area, give it a few moments, and then you can lightly drag it over. Now when you practice this technique, there's something that you have to be aware of. So you can see the first step, I just level the smile line. Something you have to remember when you're practicing on anything that's not a person, that you don't have body heat working with you. So it's gonna be a little bit runnier than when you work on a model because the model has body heat. So just remember that, especially when you're working like on the nail bed and it just feels like you're working really hard. That's because you're working on a form which repels the product. So when you practice, just keep that in mind. So after the second bead, so now the second bead to level the smile line, now I do another bead to fill in the cuticle area and the stress area. So we just wipe off the excess liquid on the dish, into the powder. Frosted glass look for the sheer powders is what we want. And I just press the bead. Very light pressure in the first moments when the product is wetter. Then as the product starts to firm out, your pressure can get firmer. So now we just want to let that flow and work it into place. So just to push the acrylic everywhere it needs to go. So it's a really easy way to practice, and you can just practice your application. You can practice filing with this technique too, but I think that the most valuable use of your practicing time is to focus on the application because, of course you can file, you know you can file, but the less filing you have, it means the more perfect your work was. So what I like to do, I don't really practice filing because I work in a salon. I have plenty of chances to file. I don't need to do it for fun in my free time. So I just focus on the perfect application and so that I don't have to file it too much. So I don't think you necessarily have to go back and file all of these. So you'll know from your application if it was good or not. What I do recommend, if you use this technique, is that you have a form on both sides, because while this is drying, you can do another nail over here. So we can just turn the C-curve stick around. Now we have another form over here. While this side's drying, we can wait. And now I'm going to show you the reverse technique. So this was the classic technique, which means we did the white first and then the pink. With reverse, we're going to do the nail bed first and then the free edge. So it's just a different way to work. It's really nice for extreme smile lines and for longer nails to do the reverse technique. So I do the classic white usually on very short French, and I do the reverse technique on longer nail beds. So I'll show you how it works. So I have Studio Cover Cool, Elegant Pink, and then the Vivid White. So why do I have two pinks? Because I always create like a little gradient with the cover pink because it makes it look more natural. So I will show you how that works. Let's see. Okay. So the cover powder, again, this is a pigmented powder, so we're going to work a little bit drier. So I'm going to take more liquid off the brush, dip into the cover. Now we have more orange peel consistency. So remember, orange peel for pigments, frosted glass for clears. So we just place the bead Give it a moment to level. And then the first thing I do is I'm going to blend the cover pink into the nail bed. So if we imagine this is the nail bed, we want to have a lighter color near the cuticle area and a stronger color at the smile line. This way, when the cover pink grows out, it looks more natural. And this allows you to create different customized tones for your clients. So as the bead starts to set up, we can press it one side to the other. And then I can just take the corner of the brush and just press up the sides. So we're creating the smile line now in reverse. So when you do this technique, you're going to spend the majority of your time, the most difficult part of the job is right now, is making the smile line wall with the cover pink. So when you do the white first technique, the white is going to be where you spend your time. When you do the reverse technique, the nail bed is where you'll spend your time. Because once we have the smile line in place, the white follows it, or whatever color you want will follow it automatically. So you don't have to think about it again. But we have to think about it now, because we can't adjust anything after. So I just take full advantage of the working time until the smile line is just not moving anymore. And you can see what we have from the side is the beginning of a wall. But now we need to do another bead with the sheer pink. So if we imagine this is our reconstructed nail plate and then the nail beds, let's say it goes there. Now we just do a little sheer pink to fill in the cuticle area and to create the structure of the nail. So now I have elegant pink. So now a little bit more like frosted glass. So we place it. Try to zoom. So we place it. And right now in the first moments when it's wetter, I use the tips of the brush to push the product around into place. So really light pressure initially. And then as the product starts to firm up, I can use a bigger part of the brush and I can use more pressure and bring this all the way down over the cover pink. So can you see the kind of lightening effect that this has on the cover pink too? It kind of softens the tone and makes it look more flattering and natural. So after we encapsulate the whole cover pink with clear, now we need to go back and clean our smile line again, because we don't want the clear pink extending past the first smile line that we made. And you can see now we have a little bit better wall. So now we have a wall where we can apply the white all the way up to that wall, and no matter how much we file, we're still going to have a crisp and a sharp smile line. Now I just have to wait a few moments before you do the white. So when you do this technique in the salon, you should do 10 nails with your nail bed extension, like this, and then go back and do white after this is dried a little bit. Because if it's completely wet, and then we push the white, when we push the white, we're moving the cover pink and everything's mixing together. So you need a few moments with this technique between the pink application and the white application. Now I just wait a little bit. So now I'm going to use the vivid white powder. If something happened with your smile line, you might know this already, you can take a nail file and correct the shape. But I think for short nails, I think it's better to just do the smile line with your brush because it's faster that way. And I don't think this is a really difficult smile line to do with the brush. When you have more extreme shapes, it's more difficult and you can file the smile line. But you always have that option. But I'm just going to go right into the white now. So remember, white powder is a pigmented powder, so we're going to work a little drier. So it's more like an orange peel, and you can blot off the excess liquid. And now I can just take the white, and I don't really have to think too much because the smile line's done. So I can immediately start with the belly of the brush. And I just push the white up to the nail bed extension that we made. So now, since we already did the work with the pink, we don't really have to think too much about our smile line. We can just focus on the product application and distributing the product everywhere we need it. So I think this is why the reverse technique's really popular too, because it's a little bit more forgiving, and there's lots more people who can work this way, because we're kind of making the nail bed with gravity. Because with the white first technique, there's no chance to file the smile line. So I think that's why the reverse is more popular. So you can see here I got a lot of white over my nail bed. You guys have to remember I'm looking through the phone, so be kind. But even this is not a problem, because when we file, this is going to go away. So we end up with a crisp smile line. If you've seen this technique already, you know what I'm talking about. Now, when you do these, you can practice the filing. So the product will stay on the C-curve stick on the form if you want to practice your surface filing. But I would recommend that you just do one nail at a time. And when it's done, you can take it off. You can keep it so you can see like how even was your product. What did your curves look like? You can check everything. You can practice pinching because the product has its molding phase. So you can practice pinching the C-curve. I think it's a really good way to practice. So it's just a C-curve stick and a nail form. So we have that. So we have working on the paper, which repels the product. We have nail forms, which we can practice our French application. But I'm going to show you another fun way to practice, because eventually you're going to get tired of doing smile lines. So I want to show you how you can practice your mix ratio by doing 3D acrylic art. So I have the smaller brush now. This is a size 4 acrylic brush, oval shape. And I'm going to use our Express White powder because in Harmony line, this is our more pigmented powder. So this is what I use for 3D art. So this is another way to practice, because in order to get good flowers, we have to also have the right consistency. And we also get to know the whole working time for the acrylic product. And you get to do something a little more entertaining than making smile lines. You can take all of your little sample nails for your customers and you can decorate them with 3D. You can decorate your phone. You can decorate pens. You can do anything with this technique. So I really like this for practicing the mix ratio too. So I have Express White powder. This nail just has gel polish and matte top coat. Of course, any kind of surface you can work with acrylic. Thank you, Samantha. I'm really glad you guys are enjoying this, and I hope that as you go back and review the videos, you'll learn more and more. I'm going to just turn over my paper towel so I have a cleaner part. And I have my dish here so you can see, and my powder. So I think since we have a new brush and we have different size beads, I'm going to show you again, kind of give you an idea. So with this tiny brush, it doesn't hold very much liquid, but we still can get the same consistency. It's maybe a little bit grainier than an orange peel, but that's okay. I think when you start with the white powders, the first thing is to know that it's going to look drier than you think. So for the flowers, I always start by pushing out to the contour and then flattening it out towards the center. So if you want, before you start practicing on your nail, you can just practice doing some little petals on your form paper. So that it kind of has the opposite wall as the smile line. So the crisp part is on the outer edge and then it's leveled out towards the center. So we can practice. You can practice a little bit before you start on your nails, but I'm ready. So I'm going to show you just a little 3-petal flower with acrylic. So we need very small beads. And a little bit grainier. So you place one on the nail. And then I turn my brush around, and with the point of the brush in the imaginary center, I start to press out the petal. I'll press out both sides. So you see I have like a hollow space in the middle and then a taller edge on the outer edge. Yes, if you guys have any questions, you're welcome to ask. And if any questions come up after the video, just post them. And I think I'll get a notification, and then I'm happy to answer them. And you also can send me a private message anytime if you want to send me your practices or you want my feedback about anything. So we can do 1 bead, 1 petal. So you want to practice picking up petals that are the same size. So we can place the second one opposite. Push it out to the contour. And then with the brush pointed towards the center, working out. So you see the flag of the brush doesn't change from the center. So it's always in the center point. I'm just going around like a clock and extending out the petal. So if you don't work with the petal long enough, if you don't take full advantage of the acrylic sculpting time and keep pressing it, it's going to flatten back out and you'll have like a puffy 3D flower. I'm sure you've seen them before. So sometimes the acrylic 3D, it looks like it was made with puff paint. And when that happens, it's because the artist did not keep working with the bead until it's sharp and crisp on the edge. They just kind of put the bead and pushed it into place, and then as it starts to cure, it gets a rounded kind of surface to it. So that's the difference between crisp petals like I'm doing and puffy kind of 3D that everybody else does. So this is a way for you to separate your work from everybody else. So we have 2 petals. Now we can put a third one over here. Try to pick up the same size. You can always blot the excess on your towel. I'll place the bead. Touch it a few times so that the liquid gets a chance to interact. Now you can drag this petal towards the center. And you see it's still shiny. So when it's still shiny, I can work with it, but I just have to be careful because it's still a little bit running. So now that it's kind of lost the shine, now I can start pressing it a little bit more. And then you want to make sure that you have it very, very thin towards the center. So always keeping the tip of the brush in the imaginary center and then pushing around from that center point so that your petals all are joining together into one center. So that's another way to practice with your acrylic application, and I want to show you a little way that we can finish this with the Swarovski. Because doesn't this flower just need a stone in the center? I think it does. I don't know about you. I think so. So we have some little Swarovski stones. And I have clear acrylic powder. Thank you, Jaira. Yeah, less is more, definitely, when it comes to acrylic 3D. Like, this is something actually your clients would wear, but it needs a little finishing. There's nothing in the center right now. So I'm going to just take small bead of clear, put in the center, pick up my stone, drop it in there. Just give it a moment to set before you... Now I'm going to use the end of my brush just to push it, but I have to wait until the clear is not shiny anymore. So you see we're making like a little setting. So once it's set up a little bit, now I can just take my brush, push it down. And then you can just bevel the clear acrylic around. Oh, it's very easy. So this is another way to practice. So you can just get out all of your pastel, your summer colors. Well, in Florida, it doesn't matter because you're always wearing pastel and summer colors. So forget about that. Just whatever your samples are in the salon, you can decorate them with acrylic 3D petals. This is another way to practice. And they're also beautiful with cover pink too, by the way. So if you have white nail or any kind of dark background, so it's another way to practice. Always, when we're finished practicing, so we need to clean our brush, notice I still have liquid in my brush. So even if you're just doing one nail, even if you're practicing one nail or one flower petal, you always need enough monomer in your brush to clean it. So always make sure that before you put your brushes away, that you clean out the acrylic. So I'm not pushing on the bottom, I'm just kind of swirling around in the liquid and getting the excess powder, glitters, everything off my brush. Be very nice to your brush. See, I'm just rolling it back into a point. Same with the bigger one. So speaking of mix ratio, sometimes we have like a really big dappen dish and we just keep filling it up all day and we just keep using the same liquid on all the clients. And as long as we had perfect mix ratio, there's no problem. But if your liquid is cloudy, which mine's not, because I only did 3 nails. So if the liquid is cloudy, you have to definitely replace it. So if you only work with clear powder, you can have the big pump and you can just use it all day. But if you're doing lots of colored acrylic and glitters and all kinds of different things, I recommend you have fresh liquid because the liquid that has a lot of powders in it will for sure interfere with your product application. So fresh liquid's very important. Now, cleaning our brush, definitely, because we need to clean it before we put it away and bring it back to a point. And I mentioned the foil. So now it's time for foil because I'm at home and I don't want the whole house to smell like acrylic. So what I do when I'm finished practicing is I take my wipe, I put it on the foil, I dump the liquid, I wipe out the dish, fold up the paper towel, and then wrap you up in the foil and into the plastic bag and into the dumpster outside, and the smell will be gone in 10-15 minutes. So it's a really good tip. This is really great also if you work in a salon or a day spa and you have other people, they don't like the smell. So this is a good way for practicing at home. So I really hope that this was useful and you guys enjoyed it, and I hope that you guys keep learning and staying inspired through this time at home. Another one of my specialties as an instructor is nail art. So I want to let you know about courses I have for pan painting. So I have a watercolor effect with gel polish painting. I also have one stroke painting with gel paints. Oh, a couple more there. So my specialty is painting and nail art. So I have online courses available. So these are the designs from the one stroke technique. And then also I have watercolor effect with gel polish. And then later, next week, we have a new class coming. It's a watercolor effect animal edition. So I have another special painting class for competitors or for people that just love animals. So I have lots of information about my courses. So if anybody's interested in studying more about nail art with me, I welcome you to send me a private message, or you can follow my Facebook page, JDB Nail Shop, and I will get you information about the classes. They're very affordable, and it's lifetime access. So it's not like 30 days you have to finish it. So you'll be able to watch the videos anytime. So just wanted to mention that. Support your educators. We're all struggling right now. So I just wanted to let you know how you can develop your knowledge more with me. So I thank you very much for your time. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. And I hope that this was useful. And I hope to see your practices. And just stay inspired and take care of yourselves. And thank you again, Kim, for inviting me. This has been fun. And hopefully I will see you soon. Bye-bye.